live. Greetings in the love and light of the One Infinite Creator. I am Andre Zvorgan, joined here today with John, Dan, Robert, Ivor, and several others. And we're going to be seeing a presentation by John Peach about the realities of the alternative energy transition and what we can realistically accomplish. And then Robert has something for us on a new kind of mining, and then Dan has some things for us as well. Okay, John, go ahead and introduce your. Oh, I just wanted to add that the viewers wanted to get this kind of realistic view. They didn't want any more of the airy fairy, and so we got John Peach to give us the real deal. Okay, go ahead, John.
Okay. Let me start sharing this screen. Everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is based on an article that Eric Michaels and I wrote over a year ago.
John, this is just you're sharing the window. Just so you're aware, it's not full screen. Did you want the full screen? Okay. There. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now I see the full screen. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
we can't see it.
You can't see it?
I can see it.
I can see it.
Okay. If you're not able to see it, then you can watch it on the YouTube live stream, because if it feels your internet connection is too slow, it won't give you the video feed, guys. So I'll just leave it in the chat here, the actual, so you can follow it along on YouTube. Okay, but go ahead, John, for now.
Okay, so an outline here. I want to start with Carl Sagan's ECRI, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and then go to three questions that I've been thinking about in regards to energy transition. And basically these are thermodynamic and geophysical constraints, biophysical problems, Jevons paradox, and side effects and unintended consequences to making a transition. So let's start with Carl Sagan here. I think this is very important to think about how he thought about problems and apply this to an energy transition. And we need to be very careful to distinguish between claims and evidence. It's very easy to see a lot of claims that are being made, especially in sort of environmental press. Says, we can do this, or even better, scientists claim that we can make this transition. And I'd like everybody to start thinking more carefully about this. You want to verify these claims. Let me give you an example of one that has been popping up lately, where the idea is to put little wind turbines in the median of highways that will spin as cars go by, right? And you really have to think about how much energy are you really going to get from something like this? How much energy does it take to build these things, deploy them? And you often see something like this could power 10,000 homes or something crazy, right? So I want to keep it, thinking more deeply about these claims that are being made. Sagan called this his 9-step baloney detection kit, and I would probably use a different B word there, but you get the idea. You really need to think carefully about it. This was from his book, The Demon Haunted World, which is a great book. You should get a copy of that and read it. Okay, so the three questions that I have are, do we really have the technology to replace fossil fuels with alternative sources? What kind of a response can we expect from society if we tried to do this? And what are the side effects and the unintended consequences that we might expect? So for each of these, I'm going to give a claim that you've probably seen or something similar to it. On the one hand, this can seem like I'm putting up a straw man that's easily knocked down. But really what I want you to do is think about this as sort of an example claim of many that you've seen, and think about whether these claims really hold up. One other thing that I will sort of shortcut here is that it may seem like I'm making a claim at certain points through this talk, but what you really ought to do is think of the converse to that and say, does the converse hold up? So this is when I make something that might sound like a claim, think of it more as just think about the opposite to that. Oops, hang on just a second. Cat's on the wrong side of the door. And it was lunchtime. Sorry. Okay, so the claim that is often made is we know how to build renewables, right? We know we obviously have wind turbines and we have solar panels, so we only need to make this happen more quickly. But imagine that we've somehow gotten past fossil fuels. We're not using any fossil fuels at all. The question you ought to be asking is, can we continue making solar panels and wind turbines without any fossil fuel inputs? And you have to think about through the entire supply chain, right? You've got to be able to mine, refine, transport, construct them, put them in place, all using just energy from the solar panels or the wind turbines themselves, because otherwise you really haven't got a transition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can we scale them enough to maintain our current civilization, or even any civilization at all, with the rates of energy that they produce? And of course, you guys all know that primary energy, is only about 20% of it is electricity, and the rest of it comes from fossil fuels. So we've got everything else that needs to be transitioned. We're not really set to run current society on non-fossil fuels. Okay, so the first thing we need to think about is that do we have the minerals and metals required? And of course, I'm relying heavily on Simon's work. Deposit sizes and grades are very heavy-tailed, and they're often modeled as a log normal distribution. We're moving to lower grades, and it's costing more energy per unit of material. We're not finding as many big ones, and the discoveries are trending deeper and harder to find and develop. This is very similar to what we're seeing in fossil fuels, especially with oil. We're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel in oil with fracking. Same thing is happening with everything else. We've spent a lot of energy since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution to dig up all these metals and minerals, and we're kind of reaching the tail end of the good stuff. So very much like the net energy cliff we're reaching a net ore cliff. And so this is sort of a notional picture of what's happening. We have, the top 10 are, well, it's like 20%, say, of the resources within the top 10 sources or mines. And then, you have to expand the number to get to the next quarter and so on. And so to get more resource, you're going to smaller and smaller mines, and they're just not producing as much, and the quality is rapidly going down.
So I'm having a little trouble understanding this graph. Can you explain the X and Y axes here?
Okay, so on the X-axis, I've got the rank of think of it as the mine, from the largest mine to the smallest, and how much they produce is on the Y-axis. So there's a cumulative curve that's going up this way, and then this one is per mine, and goes off to a point where on the far right here, when you get to the smallest mines, it's just not worth even digging up anymore.
Okay, I see.
Okay, and this is directly from Simon's work.
And that last graph was copper, right?
Well, I said copper, but that was just a notional picture, so don't take it as being an actual graph. It's just sort of what every ore is going through. Every resource is following a curve, something.
Well, yeah, but John, copper is a great representative because you can track human civilization just by watching copper. Right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
That's a great example. Is what I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. All I'm saying is that I just kind of hand drew that curve. It wasn't a real curve. But this picture here is Simon's actual work, and this is really great stuff here. He showed that we don't have enough reserves to meet the requirements of a full transition, and copper is the key there. That only 20% of what we need is available, and as he's been saying for a long time, the rate that we can extract these critical materials is very low. I mean, some of these are thousands of years at current mining rates. So, we're kind of in big trouble here on trying to make a transition if we can't mine any quicker than we do, and it takes a long time to find the mine and get the permits and get it going in order to make this transition. The other thing that I've been looking at is how fast do you get your energy back? This is the EROI and payback time, and what I found is that with fossil fuels, basically get your payback very quickly, right? That there's a huge incentive for oil producing countries or companies to, once it comes out of the ground, they want to get it to the customer as quickly as possible. There's no profit in keeping it anywhere. The only reason that they do have storage tanks at all is just to handle buffers in supply and demand, right? So what I did here was I said, let's look at the payback time relative to oil. So I pinned oil as 1 and looked at the relative payback for other sources. And you can see all of the fossil fuels are in a very short payback time, whereas everything else is a very long payback time. And the reason is that you have to put in energy up front for well, probably every source, but think of hydro, for example. You have to build a very large dam. It takes a lot of energy up front to build that dam, and then you get energy back over a very long time. It could be a century worth of energy paying back, but your upfront costs are being amortized over that very long payback time. So it's nothing as quick as oil or coal. Coal is often put on a train and transported within a week or so to the end user. And it doesn't have to go through any refining. There's no point in the supply chain that coal has to really slow down. So,
John, excuse me, Peter Sternlight here. What I want to do to just confirm with you that I'm understanding about this point is you're talking about time to market relative to investment decisions. People who are going to invest in anything, whether it's energy or any business, are going to be looking at time to market and cost of capital. And the ones the energy generation sources that you're looking at in the upper right-hand corner are the ones that are really constrained in terms of time to market and cost of capital upfront, because everybody's looking for a very quick return. At least that's the way our economic system works today. Does that match what you're describing? Right.
So I'm saying, but I'm doing it in terms of energy, right? Not economics. It's purely energy.
But at the same time, energy is our economy, and in order to develop these things, you need an investment, a monetary investment, and the decision to actually deploy these systems, to build them so that we can use them for economic activity, is going to be based on those kinds of decisions. Does that ring?
Yeah. Of course, they're the people that are actually doing this are going to look at economics, but and you're right, they're essentially the same thing, but I just did it in terms of energy.
Roger also has a question. Roger Bentley, do you want to unmute and ask your question? I don't know. Maybe he stepped away. Okay, go ahead, John.
John,
there he is. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, John?
Go ahead.
I don't want to delay this, so don't answer this now if you want to answer it later. But I have to say the chart before, I didn't understand. I have to say, I didn't understand those numbers. It looked like I couldn't. That's not the life of the reserves or anything. I didn't understand what the numbers on the far right were or where they came from. If you want to go back and spend time on that, and then this chart here, I can't understand either. A difference of 100 to 1 for solar to oil. If the one before, what on earth is the column on the right hand side? Doesn't look like reserves. It doesn't look like anything I know. And likely here, what's 100 to 1 between oil and solar, please?
Okay, so let me do this other chart first. On the far right of this, these are Simon's estimates on how long it would take to produce enough of the various materials to make a transition.
So for one generation of renewables.
Yeah, right. So he was looking at current mining rates. This was actually in 2019.
Again, excuse me. Sorry, John. So that right-hand column is based on current flow rates. So we produce a certain amount each year. That's what essentially the flow rate, the capacity factor is for delivering these metals. And so the projection, my understanding is that it's based on a flow rate that we understand. So for instance, today, the flow rate of petroleum is 102, 103 million barrels a day. If it were 50 million barrels a day, that would be different. So these year estimates are based on production rates during 2019. So the flow rate then.
Yeah. And it's assuming that we get to some full transition. So whatever he calculated for a complete transition to renewable energy, this was how much of each of these materials we would need and how long it would, take at current rates to get there. So does that help, Roger?
Yeah, I think I now understand that. I'd have to check numbers, but I think I understand that. Thanks kindly. And then the next one, please.
Okay.
What is the ratio of 100 between solar and coal? It's oil. Also on oil, what's that ratio? I don't understand that, please.
Okay, so think about how much energy it takes. Take the EROI of oil, okay, and how long it takes to get oil from the wellhead to market, right? So I take the EROI of oil and divide it by that time to get the payback, okay? And so then what I did was I normalized that to 1 and compared it to all of the others. And so if for solar here, let's say that's right about 100 or so, you put energy in to solar and you get your payback. And typically solar, a solar system, solar installation might last for 30 years, right? So the energy payback is coming back over a period of 30 years. Okay, so whatever energy you put in up front, you're going to get, the 15 to 1, 20 to 1, whatever that EROI is, you'll get it back over the 30-year period. But compared to how fast you get your payback in oil, it's 100 times slower.
Yeah.
But the thing is that's really confusing, because over the last 25 years, we've drastically improved the productivity of oil, natural gas, and shale oil production to the point where we've actually brought down the EROI for geothermal. And when it comes to actually tapping energy directly off of geothermal, you can plug it directly into the power grid. So there's electricity directly. Versus the oil, the natural gas, and the shale, that all has to be refined and processed. There's a huge supply chain structure from that wellhead to your gas tank in your car.
So I was taking this from the paper that Charlie Hall and the others wrote. So that's the source of my EROI. If the EROI is different now, then maybe this has to be modified for other sources.
So Charlie, you got some updating to do. Some stuff.
Well, wait a minute. I'm not understanding this, because I didn't say how long anything took, but
I'm
just saying the oil, natural gas, the horizontal, they use the same technology as the geothermal, and by improving the productivity of those technologies, we've actually improved the EROI of the geothermal. And then when it comes to actually tapping the energy, it's just turning electricity directly to the power grid. It's a lot easier to access electricity than it is to access the products that you would need out of an oil well.
So, right. And Charlie, I took your EROI, but then looked up the rate that it comes back. So not all of this is
okay. So I'm not responsible for the rates. Okay.
No.
All right. I take responsibility for the EROIs given the uncertainties of the data. But I mean, oil, I would guess, takes something like 6 months.
And I found it was much quicker than that.
Yeah, it's 6 months from wellhead to your gas tank.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I found it more like 3 months, but
anyway,
3 months we can look at this.
So I have no idea.
It takes about a month for prices to reflect, but the actual molecules that go from the wellhead to your gasoline, it's about 6 months, 5 to 6 months. And the reason why the supply chains are so large these days are around the planet.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I mean, I don't want to get into, exactly the timing or anything here. I'm just showing that there is a very large difference in the payback times for many alternatives.
Okay, I'd like to make another comment while I'm got the microphone. many EROI estimates overlook energy storage costs. That's
Right.
okay, but EROI, in my view, and I published on this, should be used only at the point of winning energy from nature. The rest is sort of food chain efficiency, is efficiency of delivery and so forth. So if you're going to publish that, I'd like to have a chance to take a look at how exactly you're using EROI, because it's been used a lot in ways recently that I'm not comfortable with, that show much greater benefits of solar than I think probably they should get in terms of EROI.
Yeah,
So,
I completely agree with that, Charlie. I think that they are often
Yeah.
overlooking the storage costs that would be necessary to have a completely solar or wind
yeah.
economy.
It's called the intermittency problem, and
Exactly.
as you have greater penetration, that is more solar as a percentage of your total energy, it gets much worse. And my colleague Graham, having a senior moment here, Graham in Australia, has written on that. So
Right.
Graham Palmer in Australia has written on. But I like what you're saying. No problem. Just worried about details.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to argue over the details here. I'm just kind of showing approximate, right? Let's take it as approximate for this.
But my question is that the time to deliver, I don't quite understand how that is a problem, because it's not individual wells, it's the industry. And the industry is sort of on a rolling process of old wells still delivering and new wells taking a while. But, unless you close the Straits of Hormuz, the oil gets delivered pretty much as needed.
So I wanted to perhaps have a stab at this and trying to explain it. And if I understand correctly, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, that this is similar to the break-even point. So say, for instance, a geothermal well, it costs like $100 million. And then you get, maybe like a few tens of dollars of electricity once you have it online. And then how many years until you break even, but not just break even. If I understand correctly, it's the EROI. So say, for instance, the break even for solar would be 3 years, but in order to reach that EROI, which is like 5 or 6, it would be 30 years, or
Sure,
10.
that's a good way to think about it. And then, of course, again, I've done this relative to the break even for oil. Okay, so I pinned oil as one.
The guy who's thought about this best, I think, is Inicio Capellan Perez from Spain. And anybody who wants to ask me, and I'll send you his paper on. He works at how, if you're growing solar exponentially, the EROI declines very rapidly. Too much, because you're putting your energy investments up front, which I think is the point you're trying to make.
Right.
I'll send you Inicio's paper.
Okay.
And I think that's the best way to think about the problem you are addressing, which indeed he sees as a problem.
Yeah.
But only while solar is growing exponentially. If you stop growing, then it's not so much a problem. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Sorry to jump in the middle of this, but the issue with going all solar is that we're looking for it to emulate an energy system that is really dominated by firm dispatchable baseload power. And as you exponentially increase solar, you're also exponentially increasing the amount of storage. In the report that I worked on with Simon for Hawaii, here, if you want to deploy a a utility scale solar development, you're required to put in 4 hours of storage. What we did analyzing the solar radiance and the capacity that would be needed to actually keep batteries charged and able to emulate baseload power was 28 days, which is, I believe, about 160 times what is currently required for systems that are, that have access to baseload firm power, which is all run by fossil fuels. So thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, John, my only complaint had to do with where you've got the geothermal versus the oil and gas, because I can give you lots of examples of communities that take depleted oil and gas wells and use them for geothermal. So,
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's try to move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have one comment on the coal. That looks right for an existing coal-fired power plant. Out of the mine, maybe it's a unit train and in the door, and it's quicker than a lot of others. But if I had to build a new coal-fired power plant today, I think I could do a nuclear one more rapidly.
No, you
No,
couldn't.
so hang on. This is
couldn't.
not the building the plant. This is getting the fuel.
After you've got one in, right?
Right. It's from the mine to the plant.
Yeah, but I think that's just unrealistic. About all it says is we sure should fight shutting down existing coal-fired plants. We need to use them while we have them. But to build a new one, it would be up there with nuclear.
Well,
or worse.
Again, just basically dumping it from the mine into the train and taking it across country to the plant. That's all this is looking at.
Right, as long as you have it there already. So what that says is we probably want to seriously question shutting them down.
All right, let's try to get to the next slide.
Yeah. All right. So I took this mainly from a paper by Václav Smil, and he's saying that we don't have replacements for many of these other these critical industries. This is a case of sort of him making a claim, and I want to think about this in terms of the converse. Do we really have something that can be scaled up for each of these various industries? So, steel, cement, fertilizers, and plastics. Can we really replace these with something else? And then, of course, there's the big transportation ones, the shipping, flights, trucking. Do we really have anything that can replace those? And finally, people think of a barrel of oil going into various fuels, but there are over 6,000 other products that we're getting from a barrel of oil. Is there anything that can be scaled up to replace those? What are we going to do, right? So I think this is kind of a very critical point where we should be thinking about what society is requiring from various products and systems. And we should be asking very hard questions about whether this is replaceable. Okay, so evidence required from this first question is, do we really have an alternate source that with a sufficient ROI that we can replace fossil fuels? Do we have any way that we can get the metals and minerals required? Can we increase the mining rates to make this transition? And can we really live on non-fossil fuel sources? So this is the first step of answering. I mean, these questions need to be answered before we even think about making a transition. Second question I have is, what sort of a response will we get from society? Can we really do this and expect people to actually make the transition. And so my sort of straw man claim here is that solar and wind are cheaper, and we're rapidly transitioning, like we just need to make it happen faster. So the questions are, how much energy are we using worldwide? What are the primary sources? I'm going to look at energy and GDP, and we need to understand Jevons paradox and exponential growth. So the first one I will look at is this idea of exponential growth. And you probably remember the story of the inventor of the chessboard who showed it to the king and said, this is a great game. King loved it. So what do you want in return for this? And he says, well, just put a grain of rice on the first square, 2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on. And that's all I really need, And of course, by the 64th square, the king is, completely broke. In fact, I think I worked out that the total number of grains of rice on this chessboard after you've gotten to the 64th square is about equal to the total number of insects in the world. It's just huge. But think about this in terms of consumption of resources, and in particular, let's look at fossil fuel consumption. And we've used half of all fossil fuels just in the last 25 years. And our economic growth is really what's driving our use of every resource. Most economists will say that it'd be nice if we had a 2 to 3% growth every year. There's a nice little trick that if you take 72 and divide it by this annual growth rate, that tells you the doubling time of the economy. So a 2% growth would mean 36 years, 3% would be 24 years. So it's really falling in here at about a 3% growth per year. And it really does look like this chessboard problem when we double every 24 years or so. The amount of energy that was used, or the fossil fuel consumption in that last 24 years, is equal to the total from the beginning, right? That's what this doubling is doing. So it's kind of wild when you think about it in terms of the chessboard analogy. Another thing I want to point out here is that suppose we could magically come up with a way of cutting our energy consumption in half. That is, we get this great efficiency gain. We only need half as much energy to do what we've been doing, right? This is never going to happen, but just think about it in terms of cutting everything in half. So you get half a grain on the first square, you get 1 on the second, 2 on the third, and so on. It's exactly the same picture. It's just shifted forward by 1 square, right? So I completely agree with Albert Bartlett that we have failed to understand the exponential function, and this is really what's happening with all of our resources. And so a lot of people have pointed out that energy and GDP are very tightly coupled, and so the real reason that we're consuming more energy is because we love economic growth. And I did a very simple calculation here on the side that if you, or a typical person can generate about 100 watts continuously of energy. If you work for 10 hours a day, that would be 1 kilowatt hour, right? And if you should get some time off for working 10-hour days. 200 days per year is 200 kilowatt hours. if we have 5 billion physically able people, that's 1,000 terawatt hours. We're using, it's getting close to 200,000 terawatt hours of primary energy from all sources. So we're using way more than what we could physically do by ourselves, which is, a real reason why we're using all these different energy sources. And that means that we're not likely to transition from one source to another because energy is just too valuable to give up. As a result, you can see this, that there's no transition here in energy consumption, right? We're just piling on more and more. Of course, the population has been growing exponentially, GDP is growing exponentially, and CO2 emissions also, of course, growing exponentially. The next problem is that the energy use is governed by Jevons paradox, which says that as things become more efficient, instead of using less energy, we actually wind up using more. And so as civilization has expanded, we just became more efficient, but we, of course, from that previous chart, got into this positive feedback loop of just using more and more continuously. I've shown this one before. This is very notional. We don't have enough energy to do this, but if we had the energy source to continue using more energy at an exponential rate, I guess, if we started now, sometime, or 400 years from now, the energy that is generated, just that heat from that energy would be enough to boil water. Fairly soon after that, we'd be burning paper, and in less than 1,000 years, the temperature of the Earth would be equivalent to the temperature at the surface of the sun. And the reason for this is that the only pathway to get rid of energy, the energy that's consumed, is to radiate it away from the Earth. And this is key to global warming, is that we have an energy imbalance. Most of the energy imbalance right now is coming from greenhouse gases trapping solar energy and not releasing it back out into space. But there is a growing and not insignificant amount is due to waste heat from all of our various sources. And every time we use any form of energy at all, it becomes heat. And so right now, it's about 4% of the total global warming is due to this waste heat. Since CO2 is not going to go down anytime soon, if we were to keep increasing energy consumption of any sort, that heat has to go somewhere. So even what we think of as green energy would increase the temperature of the Earth. Okay, so evidence required for this is, are we going to be able to somehow continue exponential growth of GDP with non-fossil fuel sources? And looking at the history of energy use and saying, okay, we haven't done any substitution. Why would we do it in the future, right? We'd have to show that Jevons paradox doesn't hold anymore. The economy can continue to grow without energy being added to the Earth system, and somehow we could decouple the economy from energy consumption, or have, perfectly circular economy. I don't see that happening yet, but this is the evidence that I would look for. Okay, the third one is what I'm calling it's the ecology stupid, and claim that's often made is we need energy. Without it, billions of people will die. That's probably true, but I think the bigger picture is that we're destroying the biosphere at an incredibly rapid rate.
Mm-hmm.
Some estimates that I've seen are that wild species populations have declined by 75% over the last 50 years. I'm not an ecologist, so I'm going to have to depend on them to know this. I think, Charlie, you probably know better than I do about this. And I'm looking at, alternative energy sources are not leading to a greater environmental awareness, really. What would, if we had some alternative energy sources, what would be preventing us from continuing to destroy the biosphere? And as I've mentioned before, I think we're following Odom's maximum power principle. We're just using more energy because that's what every species does. Okay, so this is kind of a wild picture, but I think Overshoot is really the central problem here, and we have what's being called a polycrisis, that there's everything sort of going wrong at once because we're over-consuming, we have way more population than we had prior to the Industrial Revolution, and it's being carried by fossil fuels. I think technically Overshoot is defined as a species that is greater than, it's consuming more than the resources are available, and so perhaps you could say, well, we have fossil fuels, and so we're not technically in Overshoot yet, but as soon as fossil fuel decline, then we probably will be in Overshoot. Okay, what's causing this rapid biodiversity loss, habitat loss, overexploitation, some climate change, although I think that's not even the big one yet. A lot of pollution, got invasive species. And then there's the problem that there's a sort of cascading problem that when you destroy or significantly reduce the population of one species, it's not in isolation of everything else. Every other species is depending on that species, right? So hurting one hurts everybody. And I won't go into a lot of detail here, but there was a nice article by Bill Reese recently, 24 Reasons Why We're Hooped. Or I think hooped is the polite Canadian term for screwed. And he goes into kind of the same things of why green solutions won't work. We have sort of cultural and institutional momentum on the path that we're on that it's going to be very hard to turn around. And of course, he's very much bringing up the point of we're in Overshoot and ecological collapse. So for this section, wow, we'd have to get society to recognize the dangers of the polycrisis and respond to it. World leaders have to become convinced that economic growth can't continue. We'd have to reduce our consumption to probably about 1% of current levels, and somehow we're going to restore biodiversity. I don't know how that's going to happen, but and I think of it as like trying to convince people that there's this big problem is, like you could imagine talking to somebody about this outside of our group here, and they'll say, yeah, but I got to go to work now, right? This is just completely kind of the wrong direction for for most people. So then I looked very carefully at this. What is human history like? And for most of the time, we were hunter-gatherers. And in a 12-hour clock sort of representation of this, 11 and a half hours, we were hunter-gatherers. Only in the last less than 30 minutes did we have agriculture. The Industrial Revolution was 41 seconds. We've had this rapid species decline over the last 8 seconds, and half of all fossil fuel consumptions what happened in the last 4 seconds, right? So this is kind of a big picture of how rapidly things have changed compared to our long history. But it's, because we've lived these last, basically 10 seconds, we think this is normal, and it's not. This just can't go on the way it is. So I think we're, as I said, desperately seeking solutions. We think that there are, a lot of people think there are simple solutions. Just switch over to solar and wind and we'll be fine. But that's probably the wrong way to think about it. And Edward Wilson said, we have these Paleolithic emotions, but godlike technology. And I would add in here that we think of ourselves as, wise, when in fact what we are is merely clever. We haven't really thought through the consequences of having all this technology. So just in summary, I think we have very difficult physical constraints. We don't have the minerals and ores to get through. There's no pathway that shows that these systems are fully reproducible. They can't self-replicate. We have to overcome economic realities. Convince people that growth is not really such a good thing, and somehow overcome the Jevons paradox. And I think the ecological impact is much bigger than people really realize. It's very hard to understand. It's very hard to accept how rapidly the ecology and the biosphere is declining, because one day looks like the previous day, right? You don't notice that there's a rapid decline, but it's just astoundingly fast. So I'll close there. I've included a few references, and of course, within these references, you'll find even more. And go back to, I'll let you guys ask any questions or comments.
Okay, Charlie has a question.
Yeah. Did you make those diagrams? I haven't seen them before. Did you draw them?
Oh, these like this?
Yeah.
No, actually, I asked Gemini to do this.
Who?
Gemini?
It's an AI.
Yeah, which is crazy, because I'm using.
But they're new.
The worst energy source.
Yeah. But you wanna use them if they're available. I thought your final suite were really very remarkable. The clock and this one and so forth. And I think our problem has collectively, our problem has been in communication. And I think you've done a better job in your diagrams than most others. And I'm trying to think of how we can get these out there in a better way. But anyway, I'm very impressed with your AI artistic abilities.
Thanks, but it was hardly me. I just told it what to do.
Yeah, but that's clever. Now, it's this long, complicated way that we got to go. Is you've made a good step in that direction. I'm trying to think what we might do to get that into a wider audience. The diagrams, I think, are great, but we need probably a more convincing speaker.
Yeah. So I keep coming back to this thing that all of this is happening, but do we realistically think we can change the direction?
No, I don't. I thought we were going to run out of oil and that'd take care of it, but it's taking a little more time than I thought, and gas is coming in. I don't think so far renewables are making too much difference. A little. So I still. I mean, who knows? I think the thing that's likely to do us in is more likely to be some kind of social issue that we can't predict. And so I don't know, but I always did think when we, go over Hubbard's curve, that'd take care of it, but it's not quite doing that.
Right. And I also think, even if we could somehow overcome or transition to some other source, an awful lot of these things here would still happen.
Oh yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially the habitat loss and overexploitation. Why would we
even accelerate?
Yeah.
Yeah, and those have been happening for thousands of years. The Bronze Age collapse was due to ecological destruction as well.
Except we're doing it far better now. Right?
Your slide deck, please.
Well, Charlie, again, I understand what you're saying, but I think everybody's also overlooking the fact that we've had resource limitations basically cause civilizations on our planet grind to a halt. A good example, whenever the Bronze Age collapsed, which was probably caused by the lack of tin, unable to make bronze, or what happened to the Roman Empire when they ran out of wood. They basically burned up all the trees around the Mediterranean. That was one of the contributing factors, caused the Roman Empire to collapse. So you can't say this hasn't happened before. It has. The question is, how long can we drag this on? It's not if it's going to happen. It's just when.
Right. But I think that it's great to look at historical examples. To me, the big difference is that nobody in the past was facing a crisis at this magnitude, right? That we've, in the last 2 centuries, we've gotten just exponentially better at exploiting natural resources.
Mm-hmm. Ivor has a question.
I understand what you're saying, John. We can't keep exponentially growing like we are. That makes sense.
Yeah. I wonder if I could talk a little bit. What I think is, it seems to me that you said that climate change might not be as big a problem. Well, next summer, it looks like El Nino's coming back. And El Nino is going to bump worldwide temperatures almost a half a degree.
Yeah. No, I meant that if we switched over to some other non-fossil fuel source, that climate change wouldn't affect the biosphere as badly as some of these other things. I mean, it would slow down the impact if we switched over, right? But it wouldn't stop everything.
No, I agree. It's not gonna. Nothing's gonna slow down this juggernaut now. And I think what El Nino is going to do is going to give us a little glimpse of a world at 2 degrees or close to 2 degrees. And that might scare people, But it seems to me like the solution that we've figured out for basically everything lately is blow more stuff up.
Yeah,
Right.
but Ivor, how's that going to affect the food supply whenever the weather's affecting things that way? I mean, how much
Yeah,
food
2
supply are we
degrees.
gonna lose because of that? Because of the El Nino effect. Yeah.
And if we have another Iran crisis type situation like in the 70s, people might start taking resources more seriously. So who knows? All right. So do we have any more questions for John and his presentation? Or we also have a...
John, speaking as an editor, I'd like to get your diagrams into a publication. And I also would like to, I liked a lot what Dan said about the Bronze Age and that kind of stuff. So I'd like maybe a combined paper, even you two guys writing together, if you could tolerate that, for a journal that I'm editing or some other place. I don't know, but let's.
Well, I know of a couple of good books, Charlie. One is 1177, When Civilization Collapsed. That was by Dr. Klein, and there's been a number of books written on the collapse of the Roman Empire. So.
Yeah, well, we've got lots of those and so forth, but so we need to put this together in a very digestible way. And I don't know if you are the guys to do it, but you're the guys who came up with the ideas. And John, don't downplay your diagrams. I think they're quite remarkable. I think we'd like a better platform, but let's think about it. I'm going to charge you two with thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I don't know if Charlie, if you've seen my recent videos, but I have AI videos where it has an AI generated image for every 6-second frame to make it easier to understand what the speaker is saying. I sent it in one of my recent, anyways, but we'll follow up on that later. So for now, I think we can. I'll hand it over to Dusty to introduce the.
Does anybody disagree with me? Please write me.
Okay.
I'll be happy to share these slides with anybody that wants them.
Okay. Yes. Please send them to me, and then I will link them in the description of the YouTube. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, Dusty, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead. Introduce your speaker.
Okay, so Robert, he's going to be talking about his technology, SEM, salt electro mining. This technology, I wish Simon was here for this, but he's not here just yet. But basically, in a nutshell, he has come up with a way to make this system work in a very efficient way and to lower costs. Now, it's not necessarily going to change everything in the previous presentation we just had, but it is a big help in the getting the mining resources that we need for a transition. And it also can have impacts in other technologies like flow batteries and other storage technologies. So I won't get into it too much. He'll present it. It isn't necessarily a novel process, but his methods are. So if he's ready, I will.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, so yes, my name is Robert. I just want to firstly say I'm actually really, really glad to be in here. I wasn't too sure how this podcast would be or what the topic is, but hearing the previous presentation really gave me a lot more enthusiasm that I'm definitely in the right environment. But fundamentally, yeah, so let me get started. I've been developing what's called an ion exchange membrane. An ion exchange membrane allows you to control entropy directly with electricity, and it's a reversible process. So specifically in my mining process, I use a cation exchange membrane, and it regenerates that, allows it to keep the acids and bases separate. On the positive side, it regenerates the acids, leaches out the ore, turns into water-soluble salts, and then runs that back to the negative side, reduces it down through electrolysis, at the same time regenerate the acid, and then if that depleted solution flows back into the positive side and repeats the cycle. So it's a completely closed loop system, and that's one of the key things that allows it to achieve such high efficiencies. A lot of people, as you guys previously mentioned, right, there's a lot of problem with mining and a lot of problem with mineral extraction. But what I think a lot of people miss is that existing technologies are actually incredibly inefficient. So what do I mean by that? Well, for example, if you want to extract copper, gold, etc., most mining processes, they're only 40 to 60% efficient. There is some technologies like, for example, froth flotation that might be able to get to like 80% efficient, but typically that's just limited as a lab scale, close, a very controlled environment. In real life examples, it drops down to 50 typically in most cases. And of course, again, it only prioritizes on gold and so on and so forth. One of my favorite studies is from the mine of Colorado. They talk about this problem, and they specifically talk about how if we have a technology capable of extracting minerals from existing waste sources, of course, the waste the e-waste and so forth that we generate, but also even from existing mining tailings, because like I said, existing mining tailings, not only do they have, only sometimes as high as 50% of the target minerals, but they also have all these other minerals that whatever traditional process they were using, just misses out. It just completely skips it. So that study pointed out how if we have a technology capable of extracting from existing waste, we can supply all of U.S. critical mineral needs that we need. Right. So this is well, researched, well documented. The whole problem is simply what is it, how to do that. And again, that's what makes my process of getting to ion exchange membranes key to solving this problem, because it's able to control chemicals directly, right? A lot of people think that a lot of mining process are a heat issue or a energy issue or whatever issue, but they actually completely miss the point. Almost all of life, all of chemistry, all of mining processes, almost every industry relies off chemistry. And chemistry is the interaction of two molecules with their electrons. So if you're able to control that directly, you have the most efficient way of doing something. Okay. So this is a very well-known field, very well-known topic, very well-known research, ion exchange membranes. But the key thing that I developed and actually open sourced is a novel way to produce these membranes for dirt cheap. You can make them yourself. So if you want to write down the recipe, you get some water softener resin, pulverize it into a powder through a grinder or a blender, high-speed grinder, and then you mix it 50-50% ratio with PVC cement and the ion exchange resin. And that creates a ion exchange membrane, which is a fraction of the cost of traditional membranes. Like, for example, one sheet commercial ion exchange membranes can cost hundreds of dollars. This membrane costs less than $1 for a square yard. It's incredibly cheap, and I've shown it working already on mining waste, already showed it working on various feedstocks. And it's able to extract 53 of the 60 critical minerals, all the rare earth elements, all the precious metals, including rhodium and so forth, all the platinum group metals, because the the oxidizing redox potential is high enough of dissolving things. So people aren't familiar with chemistry or whatever. You're probably familiar with aqua regia. It's what a lot of people use to dissolve gold. Well, the key part is the chlorine, the hydrochloric acid. That's actually what dissolves the metals and turns into a salt. But the nitric acid is simply an oxidizer. It's like a catalyst. So if you're able to produce, so that's all that's needed to understand, is that the nitric acid is only an oxidizer. If you're able to produce a similar oxidizer electrochemically, then you can produce both chemicals using salt. And that's fundamentally what I use. So I use hydrochloric acid in my system with a little bit of salt. That forms what's called sodium chlorate. And this is actually a very similar process that a lot of amateurs use to extract from catalytic converters and so forth, is they will use bleach and hydrochloric acid to extract it, because regular aqua regia just won't even touch these platinum group metals. They're just so hard to dissolve.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Go ahead.
Dusty, you want to say something or?
Yeah, so it seems like, you know, this technology is around, but most of the technology I've seen is like in a single vat, and they do a process, take out the gold or whatever, and then they're left with a toxic chemical after. And one of the key differences of yours is that it uses the membrane and that it's a cycle. So you're also able to clean up toxic waste or tailings. You could set up this system at a previous mine and go through their tailings and clean them up.
Yeah, so you can run, yeah, like exactly like you said. The one best way to understand the process is you put in toxic heavy metal feedstocks, right, ore, waste, etc., and you get out a concentrate heavy metal powder that is economically refinable, either the traditional methods or further processes that I've also developed. I call it the continuous mining unit is actually what concentrates that powder, and the continuous refining unit is what then separates that into its individual components. But let's just stick with the mining unit. So you put in toxic materials, get a concentrate, and get out clean silt or rocks that is actually safer than traditional agricultural soils. So I've actually had experience because all the heavy metals are out, right? A lot of people don't understand this, but arsenic and lead is very, very present in a lot of soils and farming agricultural. So and it ends up in the plants like tobacco or rice. They're actually very high in arsenic because they're bioaccumulators.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing some slides next time. Dan, do you have a commentary? Do you understand?
No. All I wanted to tell Robert, I've already seen some of your video demonstrations of your process, and so I've always, I've always been interested in electrochemical processes, whether it's electrolysis or fuel cells or battery technology. It's kind of the same chemistry is what I'm trying to tell everybody. So what Robert's talking about isn't wild off into the Neverlands. Human beings have been experimenting with electrolysis chemistry for probably centuries, going all the way back to the Egyptians. So no, Robert, I've been very impressed with the process, how you've described it so far, and some of the demonstration modules. Now, the biggest thing you're trying to figure out is, heck, how do I scale this whole thing, and how do I build a company out of it? And those are the kind of the hard things you've got to go from here on out. But cool stuff. Really cool stuff.
It's quite easy. I think I'm definitely in. I think I've achieved the hardest part, right? The hardest part is being able to produce a system that is easily mass manufacturable, producing a technology that is easy to scale up. Its fundamental technology is simple, right? It's a small process.
I'm in the same place you are, being an entrepreneur and the inventor, building this stuff, but getting the capital.
It's just a regular business issue.
Is going to be your next challenge. Just so
yes.
Dan, you know some of this stuff too, I think, right? About like arc furnaces and the different current methods we use. One of the things that interests me the most about his technology is that it can run off of solar. Because like arc furnaces and stuff, you can't just shut it down on a whim when the sun goes down. You have tons of losses as you're trying to reheat or cool or whatever, and this can just run, and if it shuts down overnight, no big deal. Start it up in the morning, and there's not a loss.
There are a lot of processes out there where basically you have to heat up everything. There's losses up front before you can make it more efficient and then shut it down. A lot of industrial scale electrolysis is like that, so it's really hard to shut down electrolysis type systems. But yeah, I've been approved with because Robert uses electrochemical processes, which are basically like using a lead acid battery. It's easier to turn it on and turn it off, and the losses are pretty minimal, and it's the efficiencies are definitely there. So,
and is there anything in your industry that you're in that this type of technology would be useful for?
Not right off the bat. I mean, most of what I focus on these days is mainly base load and industrial scale energy storage is what I'm looking at. Robert's process is really minimal to like mining and like waste processing and those type of things.
Are you familiar with redox flow batteries?
Well, the problem with redox flow batteries has to do with is you've got to heat them up to melt salts, and you.
No, there's different redox. So there's aqueous. So there's room temperature redox flow batteries. One of my favorites is ferric chloride. So you can actually make redox flow batteries using.
I understand what you're saying, but the issue with those is those are DC systems, and I have to convert DC into AC, and it's just like we have huge problems with wind farms and the noise that they put out. because those are DC devices. We're having to turn that into AC. So scaling that stuff scaling any type of battery technology is really tough.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of DC, grid size in the gigawatts, right?
Like we're dealing with right now, like out in California, they've had some big battery farm fires out there. There's one that happened up in Northern California last year, and they ended up contaminating a lot of farmland with cobalt. So
yeah, these don't see that's where I think I think you'd really love this technology because again, ferric chloride, firstly, it can't combust, right? It can't catch on fire.
Is the public in dealing with batteries and just trying to scale.
So if I can quickly finish, please. A ferric chloride only needs iron and chlorine. Both
I know exactly what it is, sir. I know what it is. Yes, sir.
Okay, so both processes are very easy to scale, and the fundamental technology, the membranes, because they're so simple, so easy to make, especially the ion exchange resins, of course, that's a water softener resin, but fundamentally it's a polystyrene plastic, very easy to produce. So I definitely see this technology as being easily able to produce in the terawatt scales. Also, since you're in oil, this technology is actually more efficiently able to convert oil directly into gas electricity.
Right. And that's probably a better place for you to go. But the issues with the battery, like give an example, there was a company up in Grand Rapids called Natron, and they were making the sodium ion batteries. They went bankrupt last year, and the reason why is they weren't able to compete with the lithium ion battery infrastructure. So
I understand. I think
the battery industry is really tough.
So redox flow batteries can achieve energy storage as low as $2 to $5 a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, and then sodium ion batteries had better energy efficiencies per square centimeter than the lithium ion batteries are, but it didn't stop the company from going.
What were you saying, Dan, about the
There's a
oil?
company called Natron that was up in Grand Rapids. They went bankrupt last year.
What were you saying, Dan, about the oil?
Processing the oil, that's probably a much better area to be focused on, especially when it comes to recycling different types of like used oil and so forth.
Okay. So do we have any more questions for Robert, or did we want to move to the next presentation? But thank you, Robert, for your presentation. And yeah, for next time, if you want to do one, I would recommend having a hardwire connection because your video was cutting in and out. And then also having some slides, it helps people.
I have a presentation. I mean, I'd love to debate with Dan if I have more time. I should bring him onto my channel and actually have a proper debate with him.
Robert, there isn't any debate, brother. Not at all. It's just I'm just saying, do a little research at Country Natron. It's just hard to.
I understand.
Capital scale up. I get where you're at.
I understand, but like I said, there's just basic, physics things that I'd love to educate you about.
I mean, awesome stuff, especially like natron and the sodium ion batteries. But it's hard.
There's a difference. There's a difference between ion exchange. Ion batteries and redox flow batteries. They're completely different things.
Maybe we can debate the technical details, but that has nothing to do with the market.
Yes. The marketing is very important. Okay, Dan, you said you had a presentation on coal.
Yes, I do.
I think that one would work well.
About 30 minutes. I have two of them, one on coal and one on synthetic fuels. But I think talking about coal-fired power plants will probably be appropriate with all the issues we've had to deal with coal.
Yes, and I know Barbara had mentioned coal earlier too. So, okay.
So, let's see here. Screen sharing. Okay. Share my screen. That's okay.
Hold on. Let me just. It's still loading. Okay, there. I'm seeing it.
You got it? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just gonna put the quality here. Okay.
Should see it's a graphical image of an LM6000 gas turbine. Some of the software I wrote like 20 years ago. I'm kind of dating myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is my Electron Power Technology, a little spiel for the company. The next one here. Come on. Okay. Just to notice, this is simply for educational purposes only. This isn't for investing knowledge. No problems, Andrew?
Yeah, no, everything's good. I was just, we have 70 viewers on YouTube. I was just going to mention.
Okay. So next one here. So I just put a graphic here of a coal-fired power plants, and basically all we're doing is burning coal to generate steam to drive steam turbine. As a note, whenever we build plants that they're larger than 600 megawatts, those require water cooling. Therefore, it limits where we can put the plant, which means it has to be next to a river, a lake, or the ocean. Now understand that wind, solar, and geothermal don't have those limitations. Of course, wind farms have to be placed in locations where you have the wind, and of course, solar probably doesn't make sense up in Alaska, but Mexico probably does, or California, places like that. And in theory, we should be able to build geothermal in almost every place, but I can imagine some places where geologically you wouldn't be able to build a geothermal power plant. Okay. Next one here. So coal-fired power plants. So essentially, there is no general coal. There's only anthracite, bitumen, and lignite. What anthracite is, that is a coal that's greater than 80% carbon content. That used to be a great coal we used to get out of Pennsylvania. The power plants have not seen that kind of coal in more than 50 years. Basically, mankind, we basically mine the easiest, highest quality fuel first, and then we go up to the other stuff later. Well, the anthracite for the power plants has been gone for more than 50 years. Now, there is what they call metallurgical coal out there, but I don't know of any steel mills that will use it. And the reason why is because they usually get what's called refinery coke from an oil refinery, because that's a much higher quality carbon than any kind of coke that you can make from anthracite, from metallurgical coal. Bitumen, that is a coal between 40 to 80% carbon content. That in actuality, that averages out to about a 50% grade, 50% carbon, 50% not carbon. Basically, that kind of coal, we have to use scrubbers because you don't want to rain ash down on your farmers. When you're using a scrubber, half the power of your turbine is consumed by the scrubber, because we use electrostatic scrubbing to scrub the exhaust coming out of the coal-fired power plant. So that's going to put an impact on how much electricity they should generate. And then you get down to lignite. Lignite is less than 40% carbon. Notice the term, less than 40% carbon. In the business, we call it burning dirt. What this stuff looks like, it's brown color and crumbly. If you want to ever seen a piece of anthracite, that's like a hard piece of carbon. It's an actual rock. If you ever seen lignite, it's this brown, powdery, crumbly stuff that sort of falls apart.
So I had a question about lignite, and is that not the main coal source that they use in Germany?
Yeah. In fact, when you look at the International Energy Agency numbers, you'll find that something between 70 to 8% of the coal reserves on the planet are in the form of this stuff called lignite, which is this brown, crumbly stuff. If I've ever showed you some of this stuff, Andrew, you say, well, Dan, what is that? I said, well, that's coal. He said, that's not coal. It doesn't look like it. It's this brown, crumbly stuff. But yeah, anyway, it's all the issues that go along with using these type of fuel. So the economics of this. So when you're burning anthracite, you'll actually, basically I put together a scenario. And what this scenario is you take and build a coal-fired power plant on top of a coal mine. Okay. Now I've got some examples where the public utility business, where we've actually done that. In my presentations, I talk about a power plant called Petersburg. The Petersburg power plant was in southern Indiana. And that's exactly what Indianapolis Power and Light did back in the 1960s, is they built a power plant right on top of a coal mine, right? So if you're consuming anthracite, you're going to consume 1.2 parts diesel, meaning 1 part of diesel, basically mining that 1 ton of fuel, right? And 0.2 for the ash. Remember, anthracite is less than 20% ash content. Let's say I pick up my power plant, moved it from an anthracite mine and put it down on top of a bitumen mine, right? Well, I'm going to have to mine 2 tons of bitumen to equal the energy content of the anthracite. And remember, it averages out to about 50%. So bitumen is 50% ash and 50% not ash. So it usually works out to half of it's going to be ash. So you end up burning 3 times as much diesel if you're going to use that type of fuel in your power plant. Then the next one, if let's say I pick up my power plant and pick it up from the bitumen mine, I landed on top of the lignite mine. Well, then I'm going to be burning 3 times as much lignite to equal the energy content of the anthracite, right? And remember what I said, it's less than 40% carbon content. That means roughly 2/3 of this is going to be ash. And what that means, you're going to be burning 5 times as much diesel when you're using this kind of fuel. So basically, as you burn through the high quality anthracite, and then you go down to the bitumen, and then eventually you end up down to lignite, your diesel consumption explodes. It starts exploding exponentially. So, and understand the scenario I'm talking about is where I've actually put the power plant right on top of the coal mine. If you actually have to transport the coal any kind of distance with train or whatever, then the economics become a lot worse. Let me give you an example. There are a lot of power plants out in West Virginia that burn coal mining waste. And the reason why, you say, well, Dan, how come they're not burning Powder River coal from Powder River, Wyoming? Well, you have to look at the transportation costs from Wyoming to West Virginia. And understand the coal they're mining out in Powder River, Wyoming is not anthracite. It's a low quality bitumen. So understand half that bitumen is going to be dead weight that you're shipping to West Virginia. And the amount of diesel fuel, you can see how much diesel it consumes. So what are all the complications of this? Well, so I'm going to stop right here. This article right here from oilprice.com, and up the top there's a URL. It's before underneath the words "why converted." There's a URL right there. Stop the video, record that URL there. Go out to oilprice.com. That is an article you have to pay for, but I'll help you out with what's on the article. The United States Geological Survey is forecasting that for all practical purposes, by the year 2032, the bitumen will be gone, right? So it doesn't mean there won't be any more bitumen. It's just when it comes to the economics of transferring the coal to the power plants, it just economically doesn't work. So we'll be down into the lignite economics. Any questions?
Dan,
what about Alaska?
What about Alaska?
Isn't there a lot of good quality, decent quality coal in Alaska?
That may be, but how far are you going to convert it? How far are you going to move it?
Yeah. Okay. I see.
Yeah, the Achilles heel, the coal-fired power plant's actually diesel. You know, right now there's actually a problem with diesel. I think Art Berman identified this 2 years ago. Why, first of all, saw this Achilles heel with coal-fired power plants with diesel fuel. Okay.
Dan, I got a question.
Sure.
You said that it would take half of the energy to scrub the ash out?
Yeah. Yeah, the scrubber consumes half the energy of the turbine.
So, in other words, for bitumen, the EROI is less than 2?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and when you go to lignite, remember lignite is 2/3 ash, so the scrubber is consuming even that much more power.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're mining that much more of that coal that you're moving to the power plant, and then you have that much more waste. You have to, because understand, when you burn away the carbon, it concentrates the mercury, cadmium, uranium, thorium that's in the ash. So it's more toxic after you've burned it than before you mined it. And then, of course, you know, basically that scrubber taking out the ash, that scrubber is consuming most of the power coming out of their turbine. So yeah, you can see how the economics quickly go down the toilet. Now, understand the petroleum guys, they love it because our diesel use just exponentially goes to the roof, right? But the power plant, the problem is we're a public utility and we have to actually try to sell this power out on the open market. Now, I'll show you the economics of it here in a second. But in my career, I've converted 4 coal-fired power plants over to gas turbine. And the reason why was because of the coal, because they had mined out the coal. For example, the Petersburg power plant right now is being converted over to gas turbine. And I can tell you the reason why. The reason why, there's a place called Linton, Indiana. That was a place where we had a lot of coal mines. Linton, Indiana is mined out. We've mined out all that bitumen coal. And all we've got access to is low quality coal, or shipping coal from Powder River in Wyoming doesn't work out economically. So we're actually converting the Petersburg power plant over to gas turbine. And by the end of this year, it should be up and running with gas turbine. And all we do is we take the coal-fired power plant and understand we've already depreciated the value of the plant, and we just added the gas turbine to it. And we use the exhaust of the gas turbine to boil water to drive the steam turbine. So we've doubled the number of generators the power plant has. It actually makes it more efficient. We're able to get the efficiency up to about 49% doing it this way. Okay. As far as the cost, okay, so I've used this chart several times in this group talking to you guys about this, but there's a lot of really good information in this. And understand, this is from the United States government. This is from the Energy Information Administration. which is part of the Department of Energy. So these, I did put these numbers together. It's done by the Department of Energy. But up here at the top, under plant types, it's the special technology. Notice it says ultra supercritical coal. If you go all the way over to the right, you'll see that it costs $79.46 per megawatt hour. Now that's inflation adjusted out to 2040, but that gives you an idea of the cost per megawatt hour. Now, if you go down to advanced nuclear, you'll go over to it and you'll see advanced nuclear is about $80.20 per hour. So supercritical coal is almost as expensive as advanced nuclear when it comes to producing power. Now, if you look underneath ultra supercritical coal, you see combined cycle. And if you go over to levelized cost, you'll see it's $9.10. Well, that's because that's an old coal-fired power plant that we've already depreciated, and all we did is add a gas turbine to it. That's why the levelized cost is so inexpensive. But then if you go all the way over, you notice it's $44.05 per megawatt hour. And the reason why is because natural gas is right now is pretty inexpensive. So if you want to know why we're converting those coal-fired power plants over to gas turbine, this chart here shows you exactly why. Now, I know the petroleum guys, they argue with this LCOE, LCOS, levelized cost of expense, that they argue about this chart. I can tell you that right now. But it doesn't matter. And the reason why is because even if you change it how they want it changed, it doesn't change the magnitude. The point is that nuclear power and coal are twice as expensive as other forms of electricity in the power grid. For example, combined cycles, $44.05 per megawatt hour. Geothermal is $39.63 per hour. Wind onshore is $40 per megawatt hour. Even with the capacity factor and the storage issues with it, it's still cheaper than that coal. It's half the cost of supercritical coal. Offshore wind, I know President Trump doesn't like offshore wind. I understand why, because it's the most expensive power out in the power grid. The ocean's really hard on equipment. That's why it's $98 per megawatt hour. And then you got solar and then hybrid, and 31 and 45. And like I said, there are probably places where you can put solar and probably not. But the truth is that some of the most economic power is actually putting solar panels on your house. And that's just what the numbers are. And even if you take out the tax credit, it still makes sense. And of course, there's the peaker turbine and battery storage is also in there. And you can see what the difference between running a gas turbine versus battery storage. The gas turbine, I'm sorry, it's competitive with battery storage. I mean, that's just a hard truth. Now there are issues with that. We're just finding that's starting to come to light. And what that is now this is from the North American Energy Reliability Corporation, Schneider Electric. They're forecasting we're going to have an energy crisis, electricity crisis in the power grid in the summer of 2028. And what it is basically the AI data centers, because they burn natural gas to power the data centers, right? The 4 LNG export terminals that are coming online in the year 2028 and the power grid are going to collide in the summer of 2028. And we'll have rolling blackouts in the eastern part of the United States, in the eastern power grid. And so what we're finding out is that the natural gas is not an unlimited resource. Unfortunately, what's going on in the Persian Gulf right now is sort of magnifying those effects. And the reason why is the Qatar LNG processing facility in the Persian Gulf was shut down. And Chevron shut down the natural gas field offshore there in Israel. So 22% of the world's natural gas has been brought offline right now. And that's rippling throughout the planet.
Is this, do you mean in relation to the recent conflict, or when was it shut down?
We already knew we were going to have problems with the natural gas and the natural gas system here in the United States in the summer of 2028 with rolling blackouts. Well, okay. The conflict going on the Persian Gulf has brought this problem forward. We're going to see this summer. It means we're going to get higher natural gas prices this summer here in the United States. Not sure how it's going to play out. Now, understand there are a number of entities out there that knew that this crisis was coming. Okay, one of them, and I'll show you what it is Mitsubishi. So the Japanese and the Koreans have been buying out shale assets here in the United States because they've already forecasted that there's going to be a shortage of natural gas for the world, and so that's why they've been buying out these shale assets throughout the United States. Unfortunately, we're going to need some judges to go out there and void some contracts. But voiding contracts like these, since this is an international contract, and it probably means it's going to be before the Supreme Court. So basically, how do we maintain grid stability, but at the same time tell these people, hey, we can't give you natural gas. So this is gonna. My point is, we're going to see this crisis a lot sooner than what we thought. We thought we'd had until summer 2028. We might end up dealing with it this year, depending on how long the conflict in the Persian Gulf lasts.
Okay. Dusty?
When you're ready in your presentation, this might not be the appropriate moment, but
okay. And just the last page, the question. That's just a graphic from the the LNG export utilities, shale gas, and so forth. All the resources we got down in Texas, and those new LNG export terminals. So.
Okay, cool. So my question is related to this. Elon Musk mentioned that for their recent data center, for their AI, they had to, it was so difficult for them to get turbines for their system. And then he said that they're actually thinking about making their own. And he said that one of the parts of the turbines that's the most difficult to get, even if they were to make their own, is the actual fins of the blades. He says that's their hardest thing to get. And they might actually have to go into figuring out how to make those. So I just kind of wanted to see your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's going to take. So understand, if from 2004 to 2005, after when I left MISO to left that project, I went to work for General Electric. I was down at Evandale, down in Cincinnati. I worked in the LM6000 gas turbine. That's based off the CF6 jet engine. That's a jet engine they put in DC-10, 747s, that jet engine. And I was the guy that wrote the software, the fuel control software for that thing. So I have a good idea what it takes to do this kind of engineering. So it took Rolls-Royce fin engineering is proprietary. General Electric's technology for designing those fins are proprietary, because understand that the temperatures inside that gas turbine are approaching 5,000 degrees. So what they've had to do is how to design lightweight materials, right, that have all these different types of coatings to keep these components from melting inside the gas turbine. So it took these companies years to develop these technologies. Originally, when the LM6000 or the CF6 jet engine came out in the 60s, it had a mean time to failure rate of something like 30,000 hours. Today, that gas turbine, that jet engine, has a mean time to failure rate over 100,000 hours, which is like 10 years. And understand, we've got it down to the point where we don't even use titanium in the jet engine. Most of it's just certain types of aluminum alloys, right? But it took years to develop this. So maybe Elon can do this. Maybe he can buy some technology from GE or Rolls-Royce, but I know it's not public and there's no patents on it. It's all proprietary. And it, like I said, it took these companies years to figure out the exact formula. Originally,
I think he said
had
something
all kinds of titanium in them. Now it's just all aluminum.
And there's something like 3 years out or 4 years out on a whole thing.
Siemens, GE, everybody's loaded to the hills. The only people that have gas turbines are Pro Energy and me.
And I think he said even if they were to build their own turbines, the fins are at least 18 months out or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, because the process for making these things, I can't tell you what GE does, but I was amazed what it took to make those fins. And then they have to go through all this coating processes, and there's actually got like ceramic coatings on. The flame doesn't even touch the blade the way they designed it. It's got all these little holes in it that blow air through it. So the plasma never physically touches the metal, but yet it's able to provide thousands of horsepower at the same time. It's amazing.
Wow.
On that same question of the turbines, what is your thoughts on this new CO2 steam turbine?
It requires temperatures greater than 600 degrees Celsius.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of things very weak.
Yeah, that I understand, guys. I go to the geothermal. 400 degrees Celsius is wonderful, and the reason why lower temperatures mean I don't have to have alloys that are hard to carve out. I don't have to worry about warping things, and it's easier to spin up a turbine.
Do you think that CO2 steam turbine tech is mostly hype, and that they will have a very their maintenance cycles will be too rapid to be able to?
So here, let me give you an idea. Because I've actually had to do some of this with steam turbines, supercritical steam turbines from coal fire. Because you're talking temperatures like 2,000 degrees steam, right? what we'd have to do, we had this cycle where I would spin the turbine up to a certain RPM, and I'd have to let it sit there at that RPM for like a couple hours for everything to heat up evenly. And then it'd be a little faster, let it heat up evenly. And it'd take me almost 2 days to spin it up to full RPMs, just so everything can heat evenly. Because if you don't, that axle actually warps inside the casing and jams inside the casing, because the clearances in there are millimeters between the fins, like the stator and the rotor. The clearance is like in millimeters. So if you didn't go through that 2-day process of spinning it up, right, literally it'd actually jam in there, and you'd have to cut it open just to fix it. So and the other thing too, those high temperatures are really hard on bearings and components, and then you've got all the thermal expansion issues you got to deal with, right? So the Japanese are really good at building this type of stuff, but it requires special alloys, special materials, and on top of that, you're not starting up and turning off these turbines quickly. Like I said, it took me 2 days to spin up a turbine to full speed, and then when I spun it down, it took me a week to spin it down, just so it'd spin down slowly and everything to cool off evenly, so it wouldn't jam in the case. So yeah, the supercritical CO2 stuff is going to have the same issues.
Oh. All right. Do we have more questions for Dan about his presentation?
I do have one more.
Okay.
This is maybe something you can't share, but have you reached out to companies like Tesla, et cetera, or XAI?
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
No, and the reasons why are simple. I mean, what I'm focused on are people and their homes and making sure your lights are staying on. I mean, if these people come to talk to me, I'll talk to them. But I'm not going to go solicit. I don't have to. I'm the guy I'm the guy sitting with the warehouse with 10 gas turbines sitting in it. I've got no reason to go to them.
What's your prognosis on the future? All that gas is coming out of frack stuff in Pennsylvania and so forth, Ohio.
I can give it to you. North Dakota is already offline, and all the other frac shields are the production slowly falling, and the Permian's already plateaued out. And by the way, those are in charts from the Department of Energy.
No. Is for gas, you're saying?
Yeah. Shale gas.
So we're reaching peak gas for the
We're
US.
already there. We're already there.
Yeah,
we're going to decline. I got the chart.
Dan has a presentation for us on gas as well. I don't know if you'll be able to fit it.
I don't know if I'll do it. I'll save it to next time. But it's just syn fuels, using the coal to make synthetic fuels, mainly because Charlie asked about what the practicalities of it was. So I was going to talk about, how many millions of tons of coal would it take to make this much fuel per day, that kind of thing. But we can save it to next time because it's like a 30-minute talk. But okay. Give me a second here and let me find it. I've got the chart for.
And Dusty was wondering, your company name, was it Electrum?
Electrum Power and Technology.
Yeah, Electrum Power.
Yeah.
Electron, like electrons?
No, Electrum.
Electrum. What that is, that's actually from the Egyptians, is a mixture of gold and silver. It has kind of a green.
How do you spell it?
Electrum. Electrum. It's in my email address you've been getting from me, Charlie.
That's part of the metal of God's chariot, is what that is.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to get another presentation.
It has to also do with the Egyptian gods and lightning bolts too. So that's
yeah.
Well, Dan had at least the slide
let me
related
find
to the gas
thing.
peaking.
I'll show it to you.
But
I gotta go get another English muffin.
Second here. I gotta find this thing. Where's that? Not that.
All right. I see we have
second here, guys.
Keith from Energy Transitions. Did you want to say something about yourself? Oh yeah, and I know some things I've been noticing on social media is that the Chinese are making large reservoirs for oil, and some
Yeah, the Chinese have been stockpiling oil the last 3 years. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the shale gas image.
Right. This is from the Energy Information Agency.
Mm-hmm. And so, can you explain it to us?
Yeah, over on the right hand. So you got 2023 to 2025. The difference between the two. The difference you see in the Marcellus, the number is negative. Haynesville negative. Utica,
yeah.
they're all negative. Bakken is positive by 0.03. Niobrara is negative. Woodford's negative. Mississippi's negative. Barnett's negative. Fayette's negative. Rest of the shales are negative. The Permian's the only positive, but right now the Permian's actually leveling out. So the point is there all the shale fields are declining except the Permian's basically leveled out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I'm seeing the total. It says 1.5.
Yeah.
And dry gas 3.6.
Yeah, our production is going into decline this year. It's sloping as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So we're here. Questions?
All right.
Stop staring. Yeah.
Charlie went to get his muffin. Yeah, I just noticed we have this user NHK. Did you want to speak? Can we talk about doing the March 18th presentation? Sure. Did you want to talk about that? What was that about? Okay. Well, so I'm looking at the YouTube questions. Something similar. Tom Murphy, mathematician, said they like their high energy lifestyle, so they believe it will continue indefinitely. And then someone else echoed Ivor's El Nino about the electrumpower.tech for Dan. Okay. So we still have 10 minutes, but I don't know if we don't. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to share, or in relation to peak oil or energy transitions? And I think John has left already. No?
Yeah, I know it. Understand the data I present on the coal. I make a lot of people upset, and they're kind of married to it. But what I'm trying to tell you is I saw this problem with coal back in the late 90s, 2000 when I was at IPL, and because there were coal-fired power plants burning dirt back in 1997, 1998. And basically, as time goes on, the price of diesel is steadily going. For example, one of the things that's happened with the war over the Persian Gulf, there's a shortage of the sort of the medium grade crude that we got out of the Middle East for making diesel. So by probably next year, by April, about a month from now, diesel is probably going to be another $1 higher than what it is. Most diesel in the United States is about $4 a gallon. It's going to be $5.
Oh, I see.
And it just exacerbates this diesel thing because it's a critical piece in our economy. Is diesel.
Mm-hmm.
Transporting food, trains, front loaders, dump trucks. Drilling for oil uses a lot of diesel for the drill rigs. So yeah, and it's multiplied, magnified at the power plant for making electricity.
Mm-hmm. Ivor, you have a question?
Yes, I just heard that the price of heating oil, which is very similar to diesel, it's basically diesel, went up by $1.
Yep.
And this is at the end of the winter, and it seems to me $1 is kind of a high jump. So that seems like that's probably a result of what's going on in the Middle East.
Tied to what's going on in the Middle East, Ivor, because that's a special kind of oil that we need to make diesel here in the States. The shells are really light oil. That's good for making gasoline. And then the heavy stuff like you get out of Venezuela, that's great for making asphalt. But what we need is that stuff sort of right in the middle, which is what comes out of the Middle East. The Russians make that kind of medium grade for making diesel, fuel oil, jet fuel. But yeah, that's a critical piece in our economy.
Mm-hmm. So do you think it'll go to 5 by this summer or next summer?
April, May, and it may go higher, depending on how long this lasts.
Okay, that's painful.
Yeah, because they've already shut in a production out of Iraq, which is 3 million barrels a day, and they already took out the terminal for the Iranian oil terminal, so that was 3.9 barrels a day. So right now, there's probably you can say easily say 7 million barrels per day of oil production offline right now as we speak.
And
just this week.
Robin Schaffler from the comments says, any thoughts about what happens if the Iran war is successful? They put in quotes.
I'm not sure
Hey,
what you
that's
mean
an
by
interesting-
successful. How would you? There isn't any success here.
I don't know what it means.
They blew up one of the UAE's terminals there in the Persian Gulf, and they blew up one of Saudi Arabia's oil refineries. They're taking an infrastructure in the Persian Gulf. It'll take years to rebuild this. Nobody won. Everybody lost.
Everybody lost already. Okay, so it's already a loss.
The one thing I'm seeing is that most of these kind of oil moves recently seem to be somewhat taking away from China. So, but how this all will play out is,
I don't know, Dusty, but I've had some guys at the Department of Energy ask me that, because remember, I was part of the first Persian Gulf War, and I knew about it. And I was working for the Navy when they did Iraqi freedom. So if you look at the map, right, of Asia, there's this country sandwiched between China and Russia. It's called Kazakhstan, okay? And that's an important country, by the way. So understand, there's a rail network that goes from Amsterdam to Beijing. You can take a train, electric train, from Amsterdam to Beijing, okay? Well, that country, Kazakhstan, they produce 4 million barrels of oil a day. They use Russian oil pipelines to get that down to the Black Sea, and there's a port somewhere there in Turkey where they offload that on the oil tankers. Well, they also have oil pipelines that go from Kazakhstan into China, right? So when you took out the 3.9 million barrels a day from Iran, you took it out of the picture, the Russians shut off the pipeline, and the Chinese turned on the pipeline from Kazakhstan going into China. So you didn't hurt China. Yeah, that's Kazakhstan. There's a rail system goes right through the middle of Asia from Amsterdam to Beijing.
So if there's some sort of conflict in Kazakhstan next, then we know what's really.
Well, remember the pipeline, it's a Russian pipeline. The Russians turn off the pipeline, then the Kazakhstan sells their oil to the Chinese. They already built the pipeline. It's already there. And now understand, they're in Kazakhstan, there are railroad tracks that go down into Tehran. So that's how the Chinese are feeding parts into the Iranians. I'm going to destroy the missile factory. No, you're not, because the missile factory is in China.
Well, the Chinese are denying
I show you the rail data. I got the rail data. They're sending parts. We're not sending missiles. No, you just all the parts.
Right. and then to Dusty's remark, actually, last I heard, China is the only one that's allowed to go through the Persian Gulf right now.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
They've got warships down there too. The Russians and the Chinese have warships in the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, I know before they were saying the Russians and the Chinese are allowed to go through, and then I saw the Chinese are allowed to go through. I don't know, maybe the Russians are still as well.
Interesting time.
Like I told you, Dusty, wait until April. Then we'll talk about this.
Yes.
Wait till April. Because understanding warfare, the first casualty is the truth. Both sides are lying. Get that in your head. Both sides are lying. You don't know what the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I'm telling you what I know, because I know for a fact that they blew up that refinery in Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they killed the contracts for the refinery. The same thing with Qatar and the LNG and Chevron and the LNG, because they killed the contracts. That's how I know those things were destroyed.
The one truth I do know is that energy seems to be very tightly involved in all of these conflicts.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we told President Trump last June. I said, you mess with these people, they're going to blow up the infrastructure. And everybody talks about the straits. No, they'll blow up the ports and the refineries in the Persian Gulf. It'll take years to rebuild this.
Yeah, and I know there was this alternative route around the strait. They blew that up too.
Yeah, and there's this huge pipeline network from on the Riyadh side of Saudi Arabia to the other side over to the Red Sea. They blew the pipeline up.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to guard it. There's no way to deploy Patriot batteries all along. It's a 600-mile long pipeline. They got plenty of places to blow it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know there's been this Twitter scientist or whatever that's been making presentations, and he believes that if it goes long enough, that Iran will attack the desalination plants.
Yeah, the refinery there in Israel, they already blew it up. It's the first thing they did Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
How I know? Because they issued all these contracts to go to Israel. Why? Because they're not producing gasoline and diesel. Because they blew up the refinery.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is, don't listen to what they say. I watch the money. I watch what they do. I watch the money. I don't listen to what they say. I watch physical things.
This is kind of a question on the same topic, but with Charlie, is in the 70s, at what point, what was it more the cost of fuel at the pump or just the lack thereof? Which one of the two things?
I can tell you, couldn't get it, Dusty. You couldn't get it, Dusty. I remember as a kid, as a teenager, standing in line with cars to get 1 gallon of gasoline for my lawnmower.
So my question is, which
every other day you fill the car, and some days you gasoline.
Which is more impactful for human behavior?
Both.
But let's say there was one or the other. If your gas is $15 a gallon, but it's available, or if it's not available, like which one is more causes
if you're
more?
Rich, it doesn't matter the cost, but if you're poor, it matters a lot. So it's different people are differently affected, I suppose, and
and not available affects everyone.
When I was a kid, gas was 27 cents a gallon. When I started driving, gas was 27 cents a gallon. Well, I've written a whole bloody book on it. I've got it all digitized. If you want, it has every possible way you can look at that damn time, and you just send me an email at chall@esf.edu, and I'll send you the whole bloody book.
You know, one fact, guys, farmers are extremely price sensitive. So if diesel goes up by $1 a gallon, I'll guarantee you there will be shortages in American grocery stores.
Yeah.
Both from the transportation, but farmers won't plant. I mean, we're in a really
and I've already described
interesting
the
time.
coal-fired power plants are really sensitive to that diesel. That's what knocks them out.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if diesel goes up, it's going to impact, and especially if it's not available, it's going to impact our food a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what
Food,
people
anything
will.
at Walmart.
Yep.
Yeah. Shipping.
Yeah, and we're in a really bad time of year. If farmers in the Midwest miss the planting season because they literally can't get or can't afford diesel and can't afford petroleum-based fertilizers, you better have stocked your pantry really full for the next winter.
So price has more of a scale that can change activity on a ramp.
Yeah.
But limits actually not having it is like
that's like having an extremely high price.
Let me give you an example of a big effect that most of you can't see. There's something called the IMO, International Maritime Organization. They basically have all the rules and laws for the big cargo container ships and oil tankers and stuff. So in 2020, they implemented the IMO 2020 fuel standard, which meant that it was illegal to use bunker fuel. So what they came up with is either you could use natural gas, put a scrubber on your ship, or you had to use something called very low sulfur fuel oil, right? So converting over to natural gas, that causes money, and not all ports have natural gas, so most of them chose not to do that. Putting a scrubber on your ship was very expensive, so basically 99% of the cargo container ships and oil tankers, what they chose to do is very low sulfur fuel oil. What very low sulfur VLSO, very low sulfur fuel oil is, it's 2 parts number 2 diesel and 1 part fuel oil. So that increased the demand for diesel on the planet. But guess what? Nobody bothered to change the capacity at the refinery. So it exacerbates the diesel issue, is what I'm telling you. They're big cargo containers, and they buy fuel by the ton, by the way.
And it's pushing diesel prices up.
Yeah.
I know I did some calculations earlier that if but this is for Canadian prices, so I don't know in America, but if it gets to $3 a liter, then commuting to work will be uneconomical for most people, and they'll either have to carpool or we'll need to put in rail systems in order to get people from one city to another.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think what it's doing is it's about 33% inflation coming really soon in basically everything.
Yeah.
So you agree with that?
Not a bad
It'll be in
guess.
the price of everything. Yeah.
Man, that's going to really freak people out because everybody freaked out about Biden's 10%.
Ivor, that's not a
inflation.
theory. That is an economic fact.
We don't do
Yeah, I think-
political stuff here, but when Trump was elected, I said, and everybody's running around in my circles are running around chicken littling, and they said, "What should we do?" And I said, I'm just going to sit back and watch him self-destruct. And so this will be known as the Trump recession. And hopefully it'll take care of the people who vote that way for some time. Now, that doesn't mean we have a decent alternative. I don't say anything about that.
Okay. Fair enough.
No
So
fear.
I'm just sitting back and watching the show.
We'll see how everybody adapts this. Andrew, I've got to run, brother. It's
Yeah, me
2:00
too.
Eastern Standard Time.
All right.
Hey, guys, I got to go.
Okay. Love and light. So as I found you, I leave you in the infinite love and infinite peace of the infinite creator within you and all around you, my friends. Go forth, therefore, rejoicing in that infinite power and infinite peace. All right. I don't know.
Goodbye.
Okay, I ended the live stream.